living in Indianapolis, obviously you got to see the TV program, which Bruisers TV was a really strange situation. For a while in the 60s,
yes.
and there's still some footage of this, they did TV tapings at the old Southside Armory.
Armory, yeah.
And they would air those, and that probably, was that the same way when you first came in 70? Were they still doing that?
It was, till I left.
They switched, was it, the switch came where they started shooting the Expo Center cards and they would show the preliminary matches from the Expo Center on television. They asked me before we went on the air, so what was Bruisers TV like? I said, imagine a wrestling TV show shot in 1953, except it's in color. And you would, even with some of the same names, Bruiser and Snyder, the Expo Center cards, they'd have 3 preliminaries that were just meant to get guys over on TV, and then they'd show one of the main events. Then they'd do 3 more preliminaries and show another main event, and that would be 2 shows from the Expo Center. And every once in a while, like if the Gestapo death match,
yeah.
no TV on this match,
yeah.
right? But otherwise, he didn't do a studio show. He took that tape and sent it to the other markets in Indianapolis and Detroit, which we'll get to in a minute. But it was basically, not only was it, you were asking the people in Indianapolis to pay to see just one maybe non-televised main event because everything else was going to be on TV, and then they'd run out of time. And it made me so mad when I was a kid because the main event...
Did you go and buy a ticket?
No, I couldn't. It was 120 miles away. But I'm tinkering with my rabbit ears, so I get this station in.
That's why you have these.
Every time there was a good main event, Dick the Bruiser versus Blackjack Mulligan, chain match. They just got him hooked up. They rang the bell. Folks, we're out of time. Went off the air, right? You didn't see it. You and Cowboy Bob Ellis for the WWA World Championship. They used to, because they did reruns too. That's another thing we'll talk about in a second.
I was going to say, because I wasn't there for the others.
You and Bob Ellis, they showed the same match, and I'm 12 now, right? They showed the same match probably 10 times one year, and it went off the air before the finish, but every time I watched it just to see if they would show a little more. I wasn't smart to TV at that point. But that TV show, the interviews made the show because the matches were, you know, you got one competitive match and maybe not a finish, and the other ones were, But the interviews made the show, and that's where between yourself and Ernie Ladd and Bobby Heenan and the Blackjacks and the Valiant Brothers and Bruiser and Crusher and, you know, all those great promos, that's where the guys' personalities really got over. Yeah. That was the crux of the matter. So during your first run, that's when things started blowing up, like we said. The territory started getting bigger. Better talent started coming in. I went to Fort Wayne, Indiana, the Allen County Coliseum for a NBA D-League ball game. Hello, Garrett Martz, the Fort Wayne Mad Ants. The first thing they said when I walked in the building was, he said, "You know who has the all-time attendance record here in the War Memorial Coliseum?" No. Dick the Bruiser and Baron Von Raschke. Still to this day, apparently, is the most people ever to see an event. When you can draw 10,000 people in Fort Wayne, your business was hot. Do you attribute that to the talent coming in, or was it, you were there when Sam Miniker first came in, right?
Yep.
And Sam Miniker had been a wrestler for years. He'd been an announcer and a booker in different places, worked in Calgary for Stu Hart, worked in Texas, all over the country. He was in Mighty Joe Young. He's one of the guys having tug of war with the ape. He was a fast talker. He was dressed sharp. Was he the booker then as well as the TV announcer? He was hired publicly to kind of be the general manager of the office?
He probably had some input. I'm sure Bruiser was happy to get his input. But
Who was the shot caller? Who told you what to do? Who in effect had the book? Was it Bruiser?
Yeah.
But Miniker, he liked to run his own angles, and I'm sure, like you said, he had input. I remember he was the crusading television announcer who wanted to put a stop to all this cheating by the heels, and he and Bobby had a great rivalry. But
he tried his best.
Talk about Sam Miniker. What was Sam Miniker like to work with? What was he like as a guy?
Well, he was great to work with, and he was a great announcer. You know, he was just the opposite of little Marty O'Neill, who I talked about, a little short guy. Sam would have to hold the mic down for some of the guys to talk, but he was a big guy. Anyway, he was a nice guy. He was just he had his own airplane. I flew with him once, and
That's right. That's right. He flew too.
And the plane went pup, 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 pup. I hate to fly. I
Yeah.
have always hated to fly. And
Amen.
He says, oh. And the plane's going like this. We're flying from Indy to Detroit, as a matter of fact. And it's going down. Pa-pa, pa-pa. And it's quiet. And we're going down. I said, oh. He says, oh, I just had to switch the tanks. So he switched the tanks, and 2 tanks on an airplane, I guess. And it went, ba-ba-ba-ba-ba.
Oh, that Ronnie Garvin, used to do the same thing. He had Barry and Kendall Windham and somebody in the plane on the way to Virginia out of Charlotte one night, and their alternator or whatever gives them power for their lights and everything went out. Oh. So now they're flying in the dark, and they got no instruments, and they're just looking, in this single-engine plane, and then put, and they said, "What's that, Ronnie?" And he said, "We got to switch tanks. One tank is empty. Got to switch tanks. Wonder if the tank switcher is electric. We'll find out." Boom, he switched it, and then the boom starts up again. It wasn't electric, and they got to Charlotte.
Wow.
They actually flew into Charlotte under the radar because they couldn't radio. They didn't have any power. They couldn't do anything with that. So they flew under the radar. Ronnie Garvin, under the radar, past like the 28th floor of the 30-story bank building, right? And Kendall Windham, for some reason, was asleep. Who knows? But hey.
I know.
Barry gives him the Iggy. He says, "Kendall, wake up. You're never going to see Charlotte look like this again." And they flew in and landed at the airport. When nobody knew they were there, they taxied up behind the hangar and jumped out, grabbed their shit, and run off.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's airplanes. You and I are the same with flying. But the different...
This stool has me a little excited.
Yeah, it's too far up.
We're about 4 feet off the ground.